Ed from Pinball Mayhem here. I want to talk a little bit about arcade cabinet back doors. One thing, they all fit a little differently. This one has a rabbet on the front side and a rabbet this way. This is a rabbet where it steps back. Now, the width of the wood is different on new wood. 3/4 inch, when they were building these cabinets, was 3/4 inch or a little bit thicker. 3/4 inch now is a little bit thinner. So when you're setting these up, you're trying to cut this, you want to make sure you're cutting it to the back face. So here, I know that it had, I believe it was 3/8 removed in order to hit the flush. I didn't measure off the back, I measured off the front face. And this wood I got, you know, it's sanded on one side, rougher on the other. So the sanded side, of course, you want towards the back or towards the outside. So when I'm doing the top, same thing. Now what I did is I used the table saw, I set the height to a blade, set a fence, and I just ran it through, and then I would just put a spacer here and keep running it through it. This is a little rough. I got some stuff on here, so I don't want to show you, but I'm going to have to chisel this edge, and I'll chisel it to fit. First thing though, got to put this lock in here. Luckily, this board does not have any slots. If they did, I would use a Fastener bit and drill 2 holes and cut them with a saw and just staple some screening on the inside if it did. And you just get in the diameter holes. Now it's the back of the cabinet, so it's not the end of the world. I did a test hole here. To me, it's not mission critical. I'm not doing a full restore. No one's going to be concourse testing this. So I did a test hole to make sure the lock size. So I'm using a 3/4 inch drill bit for the lock hole. That fits pretty good. And I'm going to use a 1-inch bit for the countersink. And I also got myself a 3/32, 1/16 bit. That's going to be kind of my pilot just to get started. So I want this to be sunken down into it. Now, another thing to point out is when I drilled this hole through this crappy plywood to test the hole fit, it tore a chunk out right there. So we want to avoid that. So when we get to that point where we're drilling this final hole, we're going to actually flip it over and use that pilot hole. So other parts that I have, I got a pencil, I got some tape, I have these locks, and I got these little these guys. So when they clamp to the back, this will be a little something to keep it from rotating. This doesn't fit too well. I may look for some better ones. Another option would be there was originally a lot of these were just a little metal plate that was bigger, no cleats on it, and with 2 screws. I think I have some of those. I'm going to probably put one of those in there. And that's me getting attacked by a wasp on the face. So, hey, fun stuff. I need a pencil, straight edge. Obviously, the straight edge is only used for killing wasps. I'm going to throw this on the ground here. I'm going to keep, I don't need the keys right now. I'm going to keep this lock handy for right now. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my position. You can ask somebody online, you can check out another game. I asked a friend, visited him yesterday, and measured it down. It's 1 1/8 on center. Getting the position is not super critical. They're probably between 1 1/8 and 1 3/8. It's just going to make that blade fit well. So, and the width. So a good trick about finding the width. First, I kind of like to get a good idea about, you know, 1 1/8, about, you know, where we're starting on. So width. What I do is just 23 inches. Half of 23 is 11.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark 11.5. But I'm going to always turn it around and do the same thing. Just because, who knows, am I not measuring it right? You know, you can get precise, but if you do two lines right there, you're going to be pretty close. You're going to be right in the middle. So if you measure the same width on each one, just in case you're a little bit narrower or wider, and you don't have that level of accuracy in your eyes. So I'm going to mark it 1 1/8 down. There we go. That's my point where between those 2 lines and that cross is kind of hard to see here. Get this out of the way. I don't need that anymore. Actually, I might. So I'm going to start with my pilot bit. And you don't need a pilot bit for these Fastener's bits. I'm going to try doing it this way so I can get to the bottom. So I'm going to put it on this cross. Is this critical if I'm off by 1/16? No. Wow, it's either dull or doing something wrong. All right, I'm putting things on the ground because I'm going to flip this over. So the next thing I want to do is actually, I want to drill the 1-inch hole. Because I want to countersink it first, because that's going to give me my center. Once again, exactly where this is isn't critical. One way you can do that, and this is what the tape is for, is you can actually say, okay, about where I want to stop. And that's where we can use it here, just so we don't go too far. You put a piece of tape on there, on the bit. Sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. Good thing about these is you can stop and recheck. Yeah, I need to go deeper. You don't want to go too deep because you're going to risk the integrity of the wood. I want to make it so this lock is mostly. I want to make sure this lock is mostly encased in there, so that it's at least level, so that if we do move it, it's not going to catch on anything. So that's level right there. I don't want to go too far because I want to leave some strength. So I'm going to take that off. You can kind of see you got a little bit of a roll there. So yeah, I was a little bit too narrow. That's one way to use tape with drill bits. Another thing you can do is, I've seen this done where, you know, people actually tape over the hole on both sides to help give us something to keep it from ripping. If you have cheaper bits, they have a tendency to rip, so you might want to put tape down. So now what I'm going to do is use that same center from the other drill bit. Just go slowly. Now I don't want to rip out that other side, so I'm gonna, you see this tape, not a good idea. All right, forget the tape. I got that hole. One thing with drilling is people have a tendency to just want to give her just push, and you know, if you take it slowly, especially if it's something you care about, you're going to end up with better results. Because if you push too hard when you hit that bottom, you tear out. So there's our lock. Next thing, when it's painted, we'll just put that plate on the back. Flip it over. Throw this plate on the back where we want it. I like to position my locks so that they're up and down, and make sure you got the orientation right with this bad boy so that it turns, because it's a 1/4 turn lock. You can check the back of the cabinet before you paint it to see the scratch marks, but throw a nut on there, throw a plate on, you're good to go. Now, I mentioned about these are, you can see kind of the saw marks here. This is where your chisel is going to come in useful. And it's not going to be perfect when I cut this on the saw, but this is going to just get the high spots, the uneven, so when I start to fitting it, I'm going to need to be doing some sanding. But this is why always when working, a carpenter chisel is useful. And now we're looking at the front. This is the bottom, because this goes in. Same thing. I can just clean it up there quickly. Always use a little bit of sandpaper. One thing with the chisel, always keep your hands behind the blade. You don't want to ever go like this. It catches, boom, you're going to end up with a chisel. If it's sharp enough, it'll go right to the bone. When you're using against the wedge, you're actually prying up. This way will have a tendency to dig down. So when I was doing it at first, it was wrong. This is the right way. You want to put the bad side up on the top here, if you can. And that's going to just give us a nice, almost like a planing effect. And these little furs, we can sand those out. So there's a dead spot from the bug I killed. There you go. We have a lock in. 1 1/8 inches. It's a little bit, well, it looks a little off center if you look at it too much, but looks out pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other one. And as I said in the last video, these are going to dry for a day. Probably this next few days are going to be a little bit light on videos. It's not going to be a daily updates because I am ripping into my garage and doing some insulating work this weekend. So I gotta focus on that. Hopefully I can get out here and get some glue in and do a quick video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube.